because we can talk about that any week. You're right. Other than your own players, who are you excited to see play tomorrow?
I don't necessarily. I don't think I necessarily get excited.
Maybe you don't think of it that way
about playing. One of our good friends, a media member, Howard Megdal, who came from the East Coast. Come on in here, Howard. Howard, grab a seat and a microphone. We're going to put you on the spot a little bit.
This is because Cheryl won't answer any of my questions, so she can just talk to you instead.
We'll talk about the team. I'll let Howard talk about it.
We can talk about the team next week. So let's just have fun with this.
So Howard Megdal, great story. Great story that again, like Shelley Boyne-Breen, a passion for her was to start the Shelley Bean Sports Queen books. Howard came out of the woodwork. I don't know really where you were before, but you were probably a WNBA fan and watching. But Howard decided to launch his own medium for us to follow the WNBA, and Howard produces content daily. Created an app that you could download and follow, and I would love to hear, Howard, your story of why did you do this, and kind of tell me how it's gone.
It's an honor to be here with you.
I just grabbed him right off the skyway, Howard. I so cool. Appreciate you just popping in like this.
I just wanted my daughter Mirabelle to hear what you had to say.
Mirabelle, nice to meet you.
So this was an easy call for me. I've been in sports media since I got out of school in 2002. And I covered women's sports, I covered men's sports, and there was always this sort of understanding that there was a gap. But I think I had an epiphany in 2014, 2015, where you saw just how stark it was. And this happened for me over the course of a week. I was covering the World Series in New York, and I was covering the WNBA playoffs. And I went to do a story about David Wright, terrific, accessible third baseman for the Mets. About 50 of us at 1:30 in the morning talking to him after Game 5. And it was great. And I got what I needed from him, but it turned out if I didn't write that story, lots of people would have written that story. Mm-hmm. A couple days later, I'm there for a deciding game between the Fever and the Liberty. And I went to go talk to Tamika Catchings. And the only reason I went to talk to her was because I convinced an editor to let me do it. It wasn't like anyone had asked. And I went to find out to talk to her before the game, when is she available? Oh, well, she's right over there. Let's talk to her right now. And it was just me that was there. And the idea that I came away from that with was, well, look, if we're not covering in a deciding game at the world's most famous arena a player who has an argument for the best player in the history of this league, how many other stories are falling through the cracks? And I came home, and I remember talking to my wife about it that night and saying, listen, wherever this takes me, I need to make sure that this is a central focus to the work that I'm doing.
Well, I can't say enough about it and your commitment to it. And,
thank you.
It's not been a financial windfall, I'm sure, but your passion for it. And I think that's what it's about. I told my parents long ago when they were concerned about me getting into coaching and not being able to support myself financially, I said I didn't care. I believed in this league. My first job in the league was for $5,000, and they thought I was nuts. I had a dual major in computer science and management information systems. I had an MBA in human resource management, and there were some things I could do. And I said I wanted to coach for $5,000. They thought I was nuts. But I said it's a passion, and I believe that there was a future, and at some place down the road, it would pay dividends. And I hope the same thing happens for you, Howard. And we so appreciate what you've done for the WNBA in particular.
I appreciate it. And again, the role that you play in pushing the envelope and making sure to hold people in my industry accountable is vital. And it's something that I take very seriously for myself as well. And for you guys to have this show is significant in and of itself. But that's where it has to happen. It has to happen 1,000 people moving things a little bit, because it can't just happen overnight, and it's not going to be one person. There's no magic bullet to it.
Well, and you've been amazing with your support. Now let's talk a little bit of Minnesota Lynx basketball. Howard's one of my statistical geeks. And so, Howard, you tell me about the Minnesota Lynx and what you think it needs to happen for the Lynx to be successful coming out of this break and best position themselves to defend their title.
Well, as amused as I am, the idea that I would tell you how...
I'm amused by it, too.
This is would not begin to think that I could come up with the correct answer for that.
What does the data tell you?
I'm sure. Well, the data tells me that you guys are right there. Your defense.
You're saying that because I'm sitting right here.
I'm not. You know that. The data tells me that you guys are defensively right where you need it to be. The decline has been on the offensive side of the ball, and a lot of that comes, I don't think, from getting the wrong shots, but it comes from missing shots that you guys typically make. And so, when you think in terms of what Maya's done so far this year, there's been a gap between how Maya is normally efficiency-wise and what she's doing this time around, and that has a carryover effect, right? Syl is not getting the same sort of looks inside as a result of that. If Lindsay is not scoring regularly and it comes and goes, then you see a sort of gap with that. But I wrote a piece back when you guys were 3-6, and the phrase I used was, it never makes a lot of sense to bet against greatness. And so, to my mind, you guys get in a position where you are in the playoffs and suddenly you've got to turn it on for a month. That's very different than doing it over a 4-month, 5-month span. And I think there's no reason to think that you won't be right there in the mix.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Jim.
I'm just going to interrupt very briefly. Please stick around. Cheryl's only got another 7 minutes. We'd love to have you stay through the end if you can.
I would love to.
I do want to thank Lynx Dynasty Podcast for being one of our sponsors on this podcast. The cool thing about the Lynx Dynasty Podcast, it's a nice companion piece to this. This is obviously, we go all over the map with this show. We have a lot of fun. We talk about the team, but we talk about a lot of other stuff. The Lynx Dynasty Podcast is the first of its kind narrative journalism podcast about the WNBA. It's a podcast about the most successful team in Minnesota. Obviously, stories about the people, the themes, the philosophies that make the team special. Last season, they did episodes about the relocation to St. Paul, the media coverage of the WNBA, Jim Peterson, always a good topic. This season, the first episode was Alexis Jones' Journey of a Young Player. Basically, all you have to do is Google Lynx Dynasty Podcast, and you will find some really cool stuff. As with our shows, you can subscribe and listen on Apple Podcasts. By the way, there goes, I thought it was Aaron Freeman walking by. I do want to make sure I remember to thank Aaron Freeman and John Foke for setting this up in the Target Center radio booth. We appreciate all the support and the help they gave us. But check out Lynx Dynasty Podcast, and I'm going to let you guys go back to your conversation.
Yeah, and I appreciate Neil. I want to make sure I give him a shout out because same like with Howard. I think Neil and Howard have connected along the way. People jumping in and understanding there's a story to tell, and women's sports are here to stay. You're in on it on the beginning, and you're helping to grow it. And so I really appreciate Neil's passion for his storytelling for our team. And we appreciate the sponsorship of our show. So Howard, you're able to say those things, specifically about players and playoff positioning, and like you said, if we had to do it for a month, there's you can kind of prepare your bodies and you can go do it for a month, and it's absolutely accurate. The challenge, though, in our league is that the playoff format is one that could really put you in a hornet's nest if that's what we've hung our hat on, is getting off to great starts in the season, and just kind of making the push at the right time and finishing in the top two, and you get a chance to have double bye and you get the rest that you need. And if that doesn't happen for us this season, it'll be the first time that the group has had to handle earlier play, right out of the regular season. So, for example, the first round of playoffs would probably be on that Tuesday. We finish the season on Sunday. Depending on where you position yourself, you could be on the road. So there are some unique challenges that we might have to face.
Could go cross country.
Could go cross country, and then shortly after that, you play a second round. And so for this team, days of rest have been really important. We're highly successful on 2 or more days of rest. Smaller days of rest, not as successful. Makes sense. And so we're looking for ways in our closing 9 games to best position ourselves to achieve our goals. It's a combination of making sure that physically we're not running ourselves into the ground. 5 games in 8 days, that is going to be a huge challenge, with some travel in there from the West Coast. And so, we want to position ourselves. At the same time, we have to understand, if you gas yourself in those 9 games and you didn't position yourselves in the top 2, you're not going to get the rest necessary to compete in a playoff game. So it's going to be a big-time balancing act for us.
That was a challenge for the Las Vegas Aces, who, don't necessarily have as many veterans on their team. And I remember talking to them when they were in New York on the back end of it, and just absolutely, there was a stress level that goes along with it, along with an energy level that was problematic. But I guess, and I don't mean to turn this into the way we normally are talking, but
right.
I'm curious to ask you a question, which is, how
see these reporters, it never leaves them. They always got to.
We can't help it.
Got to flip the script.
Can't help it.
It's just in the DNA. But what do you do in order to strike that balance? And have you found, as this season has gone along, because it didn't get off to the start you're used to doing, that you've had to change and alter things like your practice regimen and how often you practice?
Yeah, we already prepared for that, in the off season. In that the times that we fly are very different than what we've done in the past. So we don't take any early flights. I think we did one early flight, but that's because we had it might have been our bye week, so we had a lot of days that we could recover from. So we have put a lot of emphasis on rest and nutrition. Ways that you can help your body recover. Try to combat. It is harder to recover. When you're 33, 34, 35, 36, 37 years old, it is much harder to recover. Heck, it's hard on the coaching staff. Just to be sharp mentally and get the rest that you need when you're around the clock watching video, because the games are coming so fast. So you literally finish one game and you got to move right to the next. If you don't, you're not going to get the thorough nature of the scout that you're looking for. And so it's a challenge all the way around. I think I've gained a lot of knowledge through this first part of the season as we go into All-Star break here. I don't know that I've got the perfect answer, and I think it'll go some on feel, and maybe they'll surprise me in some places. But we're continuing to obviously use our bench and be mindful of what we're doing away from the court. When it comes time to play the game, we want to do everything we can to win the game. I don't want to do what we had to do against New York, which to play multiple people 34, 35, 36 minutes. I want to avoid that. And I have to avoid that. That would be silly. That would be shooting ourselves in the foot. But that game, winning at home before the All-Star break was an absolute must-win for us. So we went in that direction, and so we'll try to find that balance. I don't know that I have the easy answer. Let me know if you're interviewing other coaches and tell me what they're saying, and maybe I can gain some knowledge.
Did you have any questions for Cheryl?
I do. Actually, since you're asking, is the number that you're looking at? We've talked about that in the past, about balance in minutes, and you've made really good use, I think, of your bench and making sure that you're going to be able to plug them in at key moments down the stretch. Do you have a number in mind, and does it differ from player to player? Trying to stay beneath 30, is it at this point, or is it even less than that down the stretch?
Well, I think what I have found, particularly with even though she's kind of the youngest veteran that I have, she's very affected by fatigue. A lot of players are, but she in particular is, and she never wants to come out of the game. So it's really, really hard. She's as she's gotten older, she understands it more. She feels herself headed towards that place of fatigue and making a mental mistake that could be costly for a stretch. And I think early in the season, I wasn't doing Maya justice in terms of I was playing her too many minutes because I was playing her in multiple positions. So not only was she playing small forward, but I was asking her to slide over and play some power forward because of the uncertainties that we've had behind Brunson and Sill, and then even an injury, with Brunson missing time. So, Maya playing 34, 35 minutes is just not productive. Sill, on the other hand, she's better able, for whatever the reason, to play 34, 35, wants to play that many minutes. There are times that she jokes that I seem to look the other way when she's asking for a sub and then I don't see her. I don't recall doing those things. It's never intentional. Or I'm thinking and I'm trying to get her out. Who do I want to sub? What's my next move? But
good non-denial denial.
Yeah.
I like that.
Rebecca Brunson, for years, I have tried to say, hey, 25 to 28 minutes. She is just so darn vital to what we're doing. I told her, I said she's like a security blanket, and she too doesn't want to come out of the game. But I don't want to hit 30 minutes with Rebecca as we go down the stretch because she is so vital, and I want to make sure she's best positioned for great playoff basketball. Simone, same thing. I have to manage her knees and her energy level and that sort of thing. So 25 is her number. Lindsay Whalen is different. We're in a different place where it's more of a sharing, platooning of the game.
Right.
If Lindsay's hooping like she did against New York, her minutes are above 20. If Danielle's kind of having one of those nights, then Danielle's minutes rise above 20. So I think we've got that part figured out in terms of who and when, and add Orlena Larkins to the mix, and that helps me with Rebecca and with Sill to be mindful of that, because I think Orlena's a productive player that can, and I didn't realize this, I kind of stumbled upon being able to play her and Sill together. I didn't think I'd be able to do that, and so Orlena's in good shape. She's nimble. She has a high level of say motor, passion for what she's doing when she's on the court. That's really been uplifting to us.
to that end, do I have?
It's up to Cheryl. It's 12:31. You're the one with the schedule. She's got to go.
Okay,
I got
all good. To
on
be
court.
continued.
Yeah, on court. You're going to see me on the court. I'm assuming you guys are heading out there to practices.
Yes. Thanks to Howard. Thanks to Holly Rowe. Thanks as always to Cheryl Reeve for doing such a great show. Again, next live show August 15th, 6 p.m. at Freehouse. Thanks to the Lynx Dynasty Podcast. Thanks, as always, to Shelley Boyum-Breen, ShelleyBeingTheSportsQueen.com. Check it all out. Always a blast. It's great. Thank you for setting this up where we could do kind of a public show and let people walk by and grab guests as they walk by. And we'll probably do another show next week. So check out talknorth.com. Follow us on Twitter to see the posts and listen.